This is a response to I2I35's video, Evolutionists are Anti-Science. There seems to be an emerging theme in the creationist videos I've been seeing lately, and that's that they seldom actually have a point to make, which makes it somewhat difficult to rebut specifically. In this particular example, you spend 2 minutes making sweeping statements against science in general and evolutionary theory specifically without ever pausing to provide any evidence to support your outrageous assertions. In this response, I'll try my best to point out and correct your more outrageous lies, and also to demonstrate why you really should think twice about posting any more of this kind of dishonest and malodorous material.
You know, after a long time of encountering what evolutionists say, what they do is actually really anti-science. They're perverting everything that has ever been founded in science by the Bible-believing creationists Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, Albert Einstein, and so on. Although Albert Einstein, he's a big mystery, but he kind of believed in God.
Oops, almost left yourself open to an intellectual raping of biblical proportions there, didn't you? As it is, you still left enough material hanging out of your rectal cavity to justify my having to shove it back up where it came from. It's no mystery and a matter of record that Einstein was at most a pantheist who was open to the possibility that the word God might be applied to the universe itself. He rejected outright the concept of a personal anthropomorphic God, including the one that you continue to insist is real despite the lack of any evidence to support its existence and a world of evidence that points to it and all others as being just the figments of primitive imaginations. Your attempt to co-opt Einstein is as pathetic as your inability to live in a world that's not populated by fairy tales from your childhood. In addition, you seem to be harboring the delusion that Newton, Kepler and others were made from the same mental stuff as the pale and sickly gelatinous mass that occupies the space between your ears. But luckily these great men were able to look past the safety blanket of the religion that you wrapped yourself in and let the evidence lead them where it would. For them, God did it wasn't enough, and while some of them might have been inspired by their beliefs, they were certainly not satisfied by simply blindly accepting the patently ludicrous stories in your holy book that are purported to describe reality. Had they been of your mindset, they would have been happy to accept these simplistic fables and explanations, and humanity would have been left to fester in superstition and ignorance. Fortunately for us, when the evidence said otherwise, people like them had the character and fortitude to put aside these childish myths and fables, accept reality for what it was and not what they wanted it to be, and modify their beliefs accordingly, if not abandon them entirely. The simple fact of the matter is that these were great scientists not because of their religion but despite it, and your attempt to use them to bolster the crumbling edifice of your belief system smacks of nothing short of desperation.
But they're trying to say things like, gravity is a theory, not a law. They're trying to say, oh, time is an illusion. No, gravity is a law, established. I mean, look at this. That's gravity.
Do you really think that your uninformed opinion means more than actually picking up a book and reading up on a subject before opening your mouth? Words have very specific meanings in science, and just because some dullard chooses to assign his own definitions to them doesn't mean that they've actually changed. All this demonstrates is your arrogant inability to listen to or understand what's being said. What you just demonstrated was the fact that objects tend to fall to Earth because of a force we label with the word gravity. Perhaps in times past you'd have been satisfied in believing that this was due to angels pulling the pen to the ground with invisible threads and left it at that. Fortunately for us, Isaac Newton had the brilliant insight that this very same force reached up into the heavens and maintained the moon and the planets in their orbits. Using his hypothesis that every object in the universe attracts every other, he demonstrated mathematically that this force obeyed the law that stated that it was invariably proportional to the product of the object's masses and the inverse of the square of the distance between them. Following experimental and observational verification of his ideas, his hypothesis was promoted to the status of theory. Over 200 years later, Einstein improved on Newton's work by demonstrating that objects attract each other by warping the fabric of space and time using his theory of general relativity. So despite what you say, gravity is a fact, and a law, and a theory, and your assertion to the contrary does nothing other than demonstrate your complete and utter ignorance of science and your willingness to show it to the world.
We never see goo-to-you evolution happening, ever. All we see are variations within the kinds. Changes within species happen. But Darwin didn't write a book called How Species Change. He talked about the origin of species.
So now you have the gall to categorically state what's in a book that you've obviously never read. You realize that there were a few pages between the covers of that particular book, don't you? Or do you really think that the title was a complete and accurate summary of the contents? If you'd actually made an effort to read the work that you're so happy to dismiss out of hand, you'd have discovered that Darwin gave a highly detailed account of how species evolved based on the data that was available to him at the time, and made a number of predictions that were later verified by observation. And in fact, if that seems like a little too much effort, you didn't even have to read the book, just the rest of the title. Have you any idea of how completely and utterly stupid, ignorant and disingenuous statements like this make you look? I'd also like to point out that despite what you said, we've also seen a lot more than just changes within species happening, since we've directly observed and documented numerous examples of extant speciation events. Presumably that's why you used the word kind, even though you were so sloppy in your phrasing in this clip that you essentially equated the two terms. Despite the fact that neither you nor any other creationist I've seen on YouTube has ever had the balls or the decency to stand by their argument and give a clear definition of the word, I'll assume that you're trying to say that evolution cannot be true because we've never directly observed one species evolving into a morphologically very different kind of animal. This is at best a downright dishonest argument and at worst a downright retarded one. According to evolutionary theory, morphological evolution of this extent occurs in timescales of hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of years, so your demand to see it happening in real time is tantamount to saying that you don't believe you have a girly hairstyle because you've never seen it growing before your eyes. Your ignorance of the science behind evolution is no more clearly demonstrated by the fact that you're unable to understand that it would be completely destroyed should we ever observe the very evidence you claim would be required to accept it.
Darwinian evolution has been disproven over and over and over in the realm of real science, okay? And I don't like how evolutionists pervert all these scientific things and try to say, oh no, it's a theory. Oh no, time is illusion. Time is what is happening right now. It's happening like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an illusion. How much more crazy can they get?
What the fuck does the nature of time have to do with the veracity of evolutionary theory? If I didn't know any better, then I'd have to assume that your main goal in this video is to provide conclusive evidence of the world's largest pile of dim-witted pig ignorance. If your argument is that evolution must be untrue because look at all the crazy ideas those kooky scientists keep coming up with, then I suggest that in the future you restrict your discussion to an audience with a mental age closer to yours. So I'm going to ignore that part of your rant and ask you whether you're capable of backing up your statement that evolution has been disproved numerous times with any actual evidence, or are you expecting everyone to blindly accept that particular piece of lunacy in the same way that you blindly accept that lions used to be vegetarian? If you can't provide such evidence, then kindly issue a retraction and keep your ignorant yap shut in the future. Also, if Darwinian evolution had been disproved by real science, then why is it the biology departments of universities everywhere are full of presumably surreal scientists who either accept or are actively working on evolution? Either they're all wasting their time or you've evolved the ability to speak from an orifice other than your mouth. Finally, whether you like or dislike how evolutionists pervert scientific things is neither here nor there. If you believe a statement to be inaccurate, then please feel free to explain where its flaws are and provide evidence to support your stance. I, for one, am always open to a rational argument, but I have absolutely no fucking interest as to your personal tastes or whether you're upset when reality intrudes into your self-delusion.
They're really perverting science of what is happening. They're confusing people. They change and twist and distort a lot of things in science just to make their theory seem like a truthful or intellectual. I'm sorry guys, but it's not working. It's not working at all if you just lie and put forth all these simplistic assertions and unscientific assumptions out there and liberal misconception misrepresentations.
Has it ever occurred to you that science seems to be confusing, twisted and distorted because you're actually too stupid or mentally crippled by your religion to understand it? Your inability to comprehend the material is not reasonable grounds for dismissing it and points not to its inaccuracy but to your diminished cranial capacity. When you finally manage to graduate 5th grade and get into junior high, you may realize that it seems that only the smart kids do well in science and math. There is an actual reason for that. I'm also curious about what you think liberal misconceptions and misinterpretations have to do with science, and where you presumably think conservative facts and proofs fit into the picture. If you truly think that political leaning has any place in the scientific enterprise, then you must be even thicker than the bucket of pig shit I initially took you for. Finally, if you believe that evolutionary theory is based on nothing more than simplistic assertions and unscientific assumptions, then has it ever occurred to you that perhaps you've somehow missed something? And if it hasn't, then perhaps you can tell us why you feel justified in dismissing them out of hand. Can't you be more specific? If you can't, then I think we can safely conclude that you do know better and that you're just lying through your hypocritical teeth because you have no real arguments to make that can defend a position that is intellectually indefensible. Unjustifiable denial and willful ignorance is all you've got.
Oh, gravity is a law. Evolutionism is not. Time is not an illusion, it's what's going on. Time is happening right now, ever since, like over 6,000 years ago, when since the creation account, things have been happening along with the biblical concept until now.
There's nothing I can say to that really, is there? I thought I'd just leave it in because I can't do a better job of showcasing your profound idiocy than you just did.
Evolution is unproved and unprovable. It's not testable, demonstrable, repeatable science. Okay? It's been proven wrong many times, and it's been shown that there's intentional or unintentional lies used to support it. Truth is valid. Evolutionism is not valid.
If evolution is not testable, demonstrable, and repeatable science, then why is it that there are dozens of peer-reviewed scientific journals dedicated to publishing the papers of tens of thousands of professional evolutionary biologists from all over the world? Is it really more likely that this whole enterprise is based on misconceptions and lies propagated by some of the smartest minds on the planet, or that you're just an ignorant fucktard who can't bring himself to let go of his childish delusions? If you want to at least try to refute the latter, then would you please supply us with these instances where evolution has been disproved or of the lies you claim have been used to support it? No organism that's managed to achieve multicellularity should be expected to accept as fact the unsupported assertions of a self-poning cretin. Stump up or shut up. Finally, evolution is as unproved and unprovable as any other theory in science. We've never seen electrons being fired across a cathode ray tube, but we've used our knowledge of them to build computers and microscopes that actually work. We've never seen the fabric of space-time being stretched by mass or velocity, but we've been able to use our knowledge to predict gravitational lensing and to know by how much to slow down the clocks on our GPS satellites. We've never seen two molecules reacting with each other, but we've been able to use our knowledge of it to synthesize fertilizer to feed the world and pharmaceuticals to cure our diseases. Similarly, we've never seen a fish evolve into an amphibian, but we've been able to use our knowledge of it to correctly predict where the fossils of these intermediates could be found, and that every single organism discovered since Darwin would fall neatly into the phylogenetic nested hierarchy of life. Evolutionary theory has been developed using the same scientific method and by individuals with the same dedication to discovering the truth as all the rest of modern science. The only reason you choose to deny it and the age of the Earth and none of the others is because they disagree with the fantastic fables written by primitive men in a primitive age that you have set your stock in, and not because there's a rational argument against them. I think you'll find it less torturous to give up on this lunacy as have the majority of Christians and find peace with your God in the knowledge that some parts of your book might not be literal. If you can't do that, then at least accept that your choice isn't rational and learn to live with it. But if you continue to insist on propping up your beliefs by attacking science with ignorance, then be prepared for a lifetime of embarrassment.